Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Saturday, May 25th, and today is the 232nd day since October 7th, the attacks by Hamas on the south of Israel, the cutting off of water, food, gas, and electricity from the majority of the population in Gaza. Today, we had a powerful witness in the Old City of Jerusalem. Many of the attendees of Christ at the Checkpoint, a number of organizations, including Churches for Middle East Peace, Sabeel, Bethlehem Bible College, the Gaza Ceasefire Pilgrimages, Freedom Road, Telos, the Network of Evangelicals for the Middle East, and others, came together and had a service called From the Fires of Pentecost to a Ceasefire in Gaza. We joined in prayer in the Old City, in the Armenian Quarter, and talked about the way that community is under so much pressure. It's possible that 25% of the Armenian Quarter could be under threat of confiscation, of being lost, and no longer being a part of the Armenian Quarter any longer. We prayed, we sang, we cried, we called for an end to the violence. I would encourage you to watch that service online. We started in the Armenian Quarter, and then we pilgrimaged and walked, and we sang freedom songs, some of them from the civil rights movement through just a small part of the Old City, and then we had a prayer vigil that launched the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire pilgrimages. We hope that you'll consider organizing or participating in a Gaza ceasefire pilgrimage. If you don't know what that is, I would encourage you to check out that website. It's really been an inspiring thing to see people in all 7 continents walking in pilgrimage, in prayer, calling for a comprehensive ceasefire, for peace, for justice, for an end to all violence, literally around the world. So Christ at the Checkpoint concluded tonight. I encourage you to watch those talks, those prayers. I gave a talk. I cried from the beginning to the end. I felt convicted to give, to be fully present. And so I sought to enter into embodiment. I wish I hadn't embodied it quite that much. Literally cried throughout the whole thing. But the call to action that Reverend Dr. Munther Itzhak gave tonight was about impact, invest, mobilize, political activism, taking action, engaging in a campaign that they're initiating and praying together. And he talked about how the Christian community has a critical role to play, that of sacrificial love, a call to repentance, a call to Christian witness. And witness means being able to see what is happening and being able to give testimony to it. Witnessing to the realities and providing evidence of the reality. And that's what we need to do about what's happening in Gaza, from the north in Jabalia to Gaza City, to central Gaza, to Han Yunis, to Rafah. And we need to talk about those realities. We need to talk about the realities in the West Bank, from Jenin to Nablus. We need to talk about the realities in Israel. Shifting to some news updates, there was a crisis at that completely ridiculous pier that the United States built, seeking to help facilitate humanitarian aid. Today, it was reported that waves swept away a couple of vessels that were supporting the pier. In a statement today, the U.S. floating dock was disconnected from small boats that were tugging it, and a vessel broke free from the moorings, with 2 of them now anchored on the beach near the pier. Part of the dock later drifted towards Israel's Ashdod shore, while the 3rd and 4th vessels were beached on the coast of Israel near Ashkelon. There have been no injuries reported thus far. There's efforts to recover the vessels. This might be a little snarky, but I just wish there was as much effort put into saving the lives of people in Gaza as there were to stupid things that everyone knows, like this is, such an incremental effort that costs so much money and so much time and so much resources. And I know that people are working very hard on certain things. I've heard the stories about, the efforts that certain US officials have made regarding humanitarian aid, and it is still a drop in the bucket. And we just keep saying not good enough. And so we just have to keep putting pressure on that the violence, the bombing, what's happening in Gaza has to be brought to an end, and the humanitarian crisis and the famine has to be addressed. In other news, the Spanish defense minister said yesterday that the conflict in Gaza is a real genocide. Relationship between Israel and Spain has worsened because of Madrid's decision to recognize the Palestinian state. The Spanish government also demanded yesterday that Israel comply with the order to that the UN court just issued to immediately stop its bombardment in the ground assault on Rafah. Starting next week, there will be mediated negotiations between Israel and Hamas again, with an attempt to reach a deal to free Israeli hostages that are still held in Gaza. So that'll happen next week, according to an official with knowledge of the matter, so that we'll hopefully resume it quickly. According to Reuters, the decision to restart the talks came after the head of Israel's Mossad intelligence agency met with the head of the CIA and the prime minister of Qatar. Qatar has been the mediator. but the source declined to be identified by name. Antony Blinken, our Secretary of State in the United States, spoke with the Israeli War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz over the phone about new efforts to achieve a ceasefire and to reopen the Rafah border crossing. The brief statement from Blinken's office made no mention of the ICJ ruling, the International Court of Justice, while a White House spokesperson said, "We've been clear and consistent on our position on Rafah." I beg to differ, but okay. French President Emmanuel Macron received the Prime Minister of Qatar and the Saudi, Egyptian, and Jordanian foreign ministers on Friday to press for a ceasefire, according to Cairo. One of the things we're seeing happen is that while the United States is still and kind of increasingly reverting back to that position of signing unilaterally with Israel, the rest of the world is kind of pressing in to saying enough, saying ceasefire, this recognition of the Palestinian state, this whole ICJ ruling. So we're really seeing some global divides and international pressure being applied. The UK government criticized the ICJ for ordering Israel to immediately halt its assault, saying the ruling would only strengthen Hamas. They said the reason there isn't a pause is because Hamas turned down a very generous hostage deal. The intervention of the courts will strengthen the view of Hamas that they can hold on to the hostages and stay in Gaza. And that was a UK foreign minister spokesperson. They said if that happens, there won't be peace or a two-state solution. Italian's foreign minister announced yesterday that Rome would resume funding for the UN Agency for the Palestinian Refugees. So that's UNRWA. That was with Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa. They said that Rome arranged new funding at about 38 million US dollars. Of this, 5 million specifically. So they resumed funding or arranged funding for the entire Palestinian population. 5 million of that would be allocated for UNRWA. In spite of the ICJ, Israel did carry out strikes on the Gaza Strip today. And as of this morning, the fighting still continued to rage between the army and Hamas's armed wing. Palestinian witnesses and press teams reported Israeli strikes in Rafah and the central city of Deir al-Balah. The Kuwait Specialty Hospital in Rafah pleaded for fuel deliveries today to ensure that it can continue its operations. And Israeli forces killed more than 30 people in new attacks on the Gaza Strip, according to medical professionals. They did not distinguish between civilian or militant casualties. And the Israeli military said it carried out an operational activity in specific areas of Rafah yesterday, killing militants, dismantling parts of Hamas's tunnel system, and locating stashes of weapons. Residents and civil emergency services said that Israeli tanks entered deep into the area of Jabalia, that's in the north, destroying dozens of houses, shops, and roads. The Israeli military said its troops in Jabalia eliminated dozens of terrorists in close-quarter combat and aerial strikes. Palestinian medical teams were unable to reach the area where they believed that more people were killed. I will say that in some of our conversations with officials of other governments, not the Israeli government, we have heard that Israel has no intention of investing any resources to rebuild Gaza once all of this is over. Hamas and Islamic Jihad said that fighters had fired anti-tank rockets and mortar bombs at the Israeli troops in the north. And as of today, the death toll is at least 35,903 Palestinians killed in Gaza, and that injured or those injured is 80,402 or 420 individuals, according to reports from the health ministry. 10 Palestinians, including children and women, were killed and several others injured today in an Israeli airstrike on a house in the city of Beit Hanun, which is north in the Gaza Strip, according to a Palestinian news agency called Wafa. The news agency reported that medical sources have confirmed the death toll and said that 17 others were injured in the attack. The Guardian, a UK paper, was unable to independently verify the report. And G7 finance leaders will call on Israel to maintain correspondent banking links between Israeli and Palestinian banks to still allow vital transactions, trade, and services to continue, according to a draft joint statement that Reuters saw today. An Israeli airstrike targeted a family home in Gaza City in the neighborhood of Sabra, killing a woman and injuring other people. That was reported by Al Jazeera. The publication cited Wafa reporting that numerous other neighborhoods in Gaza City were under heavy artillery shelling as well. And the UN humanitarian chief Griffiths described yesterday's ICJ ruling as a moment of clarity. At a time when the people of Gaza are staring down famine, it is more critical than ever to heed the calls that have been made over the past 7 months to release the hostages, to agree to a ceasefire, and to end this nightmare. An Israeli drone in central Syria killed 2 fighters from Lebanon's Hezbollah movement today, according to a war monitor. And a French court has found that 3 Syrian officials of the regime of Bashar al-Assad were guilty of crimes against humanity and war crimes, which sentenced them to in absentia to life imprisonment on Friday after a landmark trial in Paris. A car explosion killed a person in Damascus today, the official Syrian news agency reported, but the victim was not identified. One person was killed, but no other details were provided in that report. And finally, the Houthis in Yemen postponed the release of about 100 prisoners who belonged to government forces that had previously been announced that it was going to take place today. The report indicated that the delay was caused by technical reasons. So that's the update from today. Tonight's my last night in the occupied Palestinian territories. Tomorrow I head to Israel. We had a powerful closing service tonight at Christ at the Checkpoint, receiving communion, celebrating the reminder that the work of the world being redeemed has already been accomplished by Christ's death on the cross, and that the good news of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. We remember the good news of the gospel, that the God of the oppressed came down from heaven, becoming fully man, fully God, fully human, and suffered on our behalf and paid the price for our human frailty, sacrificing himself so that the world might live. We hold on to that hope for Gaza, for ourselves, and for all of humanity. So continue in the work. Be encouraged that you are not alone as we continue to work toward peace.